Gurmagad. I too want to send my solidarity to the Fullerton family. I welcome the opportunity to speak on this issue here today on the protocol on legacy issues and the implementation of the Good Friday Agreement. And I think it's important to name exactly what's happening here. The British government is attempting to unilaterally smash an internationally legally binding agreement. The Good Friday Agreement and subsequent agreements are the architecture that hold the peace on this island and that set the pathway for true reconciliation and transformation. Now, most people on this island are horrified by the recent actions of the British Prime Minister. But most British people are embarrassed and deeply concerned about the implications for Britain's global reputation. The mechanisms for dealing with any issues arising from the protocol is the Joint Committee, as we have said time and time again. Already problems with medicines, with SBS goods have been dealt with. Other issues can be dealt with in the same way. The truth is that the protocol, made necessary by Brexit, is being used and abused by the DUP, ably abetted by the British government, in an attempt to hold back the tide of equity and change within the north of Ireland. They just cannot accept the democratic outcome of the recent election. They cannot accept that the days of the sectarian mantra of no nationalists need apply are over. The inclusive vision of the designate First Minister, Michelle O'Neill, and her team of Sinn Féin MLAs is a threat to no one's identity. Those who are secure in their own identity, be they Irish, be they British, be they both, or other, just want to live on a prosperous, thriving, progressive island where everybody can fulfil their true potential. A quarter of a century later, we're still awaiting the full implementation of the Good Friday Agreement and the subsequent agreements, and it's unconscionable that the Bill of Rights is still being resisted. I welcome the fact that Act na Gaeilge will be finally introduced in Westminster today, 16 years after it was committed to in the St Andrews Agreement. And I commend those who have relentlessly pursued the right to their own language, including the thousands of people who took to the streets of Belfast last Saturday. Now, I want to turn to the recent Legacy Reconciliation Bill, and I want to commend the work done by the Committee for the Administration of Justice and their partners. They considered the bill unworkable, in breach of the ECHR and the Good Friday Agreement, and incapable of delivering for victims and survivors, and a unilateral solo run by the British government, which seeks to sideline the devolved institutions. They rightly query the timing of the introduction of this bill, and it's hard to argue against their analysis that the existing mechanisms are working too well in exposing past human rights abuses and citing the historical clarification and information recovery achieved by the recent legacy inquests and the police ombudsman reports. The Stormont House Agreement gave victims and their families access to truth and justice and reconciliation. The visit of Richard Neal and his delegation from the US administration here yesterday was welcomed by all parties and none in this House. The chairperson of the Ways and Means Committee, supported by President Biden, has made it clear the consequences for Britain of unilateral damage to the Good Friday Agreement. The Irish government need to step firmly up to the mark and adapt an unequivocal position against the destructive behaviour of both the DUP and the Tories. The cost of living crisis and the health service are severely impacting on workers and families across this island. People in the north can no longer afford to wait to have the institutions back up and running. They deserve better and they need better, and stagnation is not an option. Being held to ransom by the DUP, aided by the British government, is not an option, and it's downright cruel, particularly to those who are most severely impacted by the highest inflation we've had for decades, and those who are ground down by the poverty and exclusion. Minister, I know that you get this. And I know you know what's happening here. And my colleague Pádraig McLaughlin outlined in the case of Eddie Fullerton just one case in terms of uncovering the truth. It's often said, you hear it bandied about, well, we mustn't rewrite history. It is not about rewriting history. It is about telling the truth. It is about getting to the truth, and the attempts that are being made here to cover up the truth are absolutely despicable, and they're recognised right around the world, and they're recognised in the deepest parts of Britain as well, when people are beginning to wake up to what really happened and why things really happened, and those who are being protected are being covered up. It has to stop.